Sandwiches!
Sandwiches! So, the big question to you. So, all of you, there is some kind of consensus, definitely going more towards the middle row of yes, these are sandwiches. Very good.
Is there any nutritionists here? Because they should be like...
Yeah. The follow-up question is, are these all food? So, we want to know, are they all food? And please feel free to right over top of the actual images now that we're all here. Are these all food? Wonderful. We've been having this discussion in our family lately as a result of some Halloween trick-or-treating about what constitutes food.
Yeah. Now, legally...
and what is just a treat, right?
Legally, we now know that at least one of those top right-hand side, the hot dog, does not legally count as food if you have a fire in your backyard.
That's
you
right.
may have a fire in your backyard.
In Guelph.
If in Guelph, we're in the Royal City. If you are cooking food and a hot dog has been outlawed, it is not food.
Hot dog in Guelph is not food, nor are marshmallows. Okay.
So, what do? You wrap up a potato and you throw it in a fire.
So we've been having potatoes and sausages in our backyard. Wonderful.
Oh dear, didn't The Weeknd make some homophobic remarks in one of his songs?
Oh my goodness. I had no idea. Okay, thank you.
And I suppose that was a Weeknd song that had no weekend in it.
Yeah, we will follow up on
that.
that. Thank you for asking, and we will definitely check that out. Thank you. Okay.
Gracias.
Okay.
So today we have to start with yesterday, and
Yes.
then we're trying to get everything in before tomorrow.
And it's
It won't
a
work.
thing. Okay. Big reminder, topic test this week. So that means that at the end of class, we will be releasing the asynchronous study tool. There's a lot there for you to work with and imagine with and help each other out with. If you remember from last time, it's less about whether you think the statements are true or false, although that's helpful, more about actually coming up with statements of your own. And what you're trying to do is write clear statements that, are well written and clear, and also that require a little bit of thinking that's directly related to the sort of the artifact or the thing that you'll see there on the side. Again, it's exactly the same stuff as before, but now there are even more pages. We're building up. Okay, so that will be released at the end of class during the student hour. If it's not too busy, we'll let it go. Okay, let us clear all drawings.
All right.
And are we moving on? Yeah. So we're gonna throw some new scales at you and some new terms, and then we're gonna mash them all together. So by the end of the day, you'll have some more vocabulary. You'll have some sort of deeper concepts of physiology and what we really are talking about when we think about it. And if you don't know who Rick Mercer is,
oh my goodness,
we will introduce you to a Canadian icon, Rick Mercer.
So if this is too stressful for you, we urge you to not attempt to regulate and turn down the volume.
Yeah.
We urge you to conform and come along.
Come along.
And those will make sense later on.
Yes. But
first, bears.
Bears, because bears. Okay, we're going to go through this quickly, so we want to get your thinking caps on.
Oh,
we're also
crap.
going to go, what?
I forgot my
You
thinking
forgot your
cap.
thinking cap. Okay.
Oh, no.
Smith is just going to wing it. Okay, so thinking cap. Ooh, there we go. Wonderful. So we're kind of working through some of these problems and these questions in the context of trying to figure out what's going to happen to polar bears. And amazing things are happening to polar bears like today. So this is all going to wrap up really, really well. But first...
Perhaps not for the bears.
Not for the bears. But first, what we want you to think about is what information you need in order to be able to make predictions about polar bears. So we would like you, please, to open up another browser and go to www.menti.com so that we can ask you, what do we need to know? What do we need to know about polar bears in order to be able to make predictions about what will happen in the context of climate change. Ooh. Looking good.
You are the biggest bear. Goodbye. I love the word clouds.
The word clouds are cool, eh?
Yep. I love the position that we have of being able to watch them populate as well.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Cool. Okay. This is great. Let's bring that over and take a look now that we've got quite a word cloud. So the two front runners are habitat, diet, and then I see range as well. And then all the things, like there's nothing that's wrong here. Like, no, we don't need to know that. There's some things that are more important and sort of are sort of more relevant to the conversation, but certainly I can see an argument for why all of these things would play into to protecting or to determining or predicting what would happen to polar bears. So really good.
And I think that's going to be a theme in some of the physiology unit. There's going to be some things that are more right than others, more appropriate, because there's lots of continua
That's right.
in this physiological world.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so here are some things that we put on the list. Again, not a comprehensive list. You have a way more comprehensive list than we do. But, you know, things about the species are important. And I think the contribution that this slide makes to thinking is that we've put it into categories, right? So species biology, stuff about the species polar bear, and then population biology. So stuff about the populations, the different populations that we have around the world. And of course, things can happen in different regions, not only depending upon the environmental conditions or the change that happens, but also based on the status of the population to begin with. So I really liked one of you said, you know, their current status or their current situation. Well done. Because all of those things really matter.
It's very hard to predict where we will be if we do not know where we are.
Exactly. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the species biology and some of the population biology.
I love this view of the map. Take a second to look at the world in this perspective.
Yeah.
You're not looking at it from kind of a northern temperate or a temperate bias. You're looking from on top.
From on top or on bottom, from a different angle, right? Yeah. Okay, so take a look at these data. This is like key, important ecological and now physiological data, right? We're talking about realized niche, fundamental niche, all of those things kind of mashed up together, right? And the darker areas represent areas where polar bears are in a higher density. And of course, they're not as super high density, though I have seen 22 bears on a beach together at one time, and they were not feeding on a carcass, which is like super unusual, but that would be like a ridiculously dense population, and it didn't last for very long, just a few days. But so we have these denser areas, and then we have these sparser areas or lower density regions, okay? What I would love for you to do is right now, we'll give you 30 or 40 seconds. Take a look at this and come up in your mind. Please do the work, because this is all training for like future biology careers or future anything careers, right? Like take a look at it, come up with 2 conclusions about these data that you can see.
About polar bear biology.
Yeah. 2 things. And then as you're coming up with two things, feel free to share your ideas. If you haven't yet come up with two things, please don't check the chat right away. Like, allow your brain to come up with two things and then compare to the chat. Good.
This is good. The chat is populating. So if you remember what Dr. Jacobs just said, hold yourself back. If you haven't come up with your two elements of polar bear biology that you can infer from this map, just turn a blind eye to the chat. But if you've already done it, explore up and down with the
check
chat.
it out, okay?
Because there's some commonalities. There's some of you that are coming up with some similar things that are expressing it in slightly different ways.
And if you haven't come up with it, because we've only given you 2 minutes, that's cool. There is no polar bear biologist emergency whereby you have to interpret a map within 2 minutes. So it's a totally artificial thing that's simply there because of the limitations that we have, like, to get through this in 50 minutes, because, like, higher ed is a mess. Okay, but like later, if you need more time, sit with this, because there are like 12 things that you can get just by looking at this map.
And park it in a vest pocket or in a back pocket or something as an exercise that you could do with kind of any map.
Yep.
And since we know in the physiology unit we're going to be staying and thinking about Arctic, polar, high elevation, high latitude things, find another map.
Yeah.
Go through the exercise with your friends.
Yeah. Okay. So lots of things. Obviously, to me, one of the big things that jumps out is the need for coastlines. And so if you also found that, that's great. I think that's a real thing, right? So this whole idea about, can polar bears move more north to the North Pole? What do you think the answer will be? So if the world is warming, can they not just move to the North Pole? What do you think the answer is?
Some no's so far.
Yeah. I would go with no.
Yep.
Coastlines are incredibly important. And the reason why they're important is that females, when they are reproducing, need to actually den on land. So North Pole won't work. Certainly they can cross it as adults, they can fish on it, they can hunt, they can do all of those things, but they need to be able to come back to land, and they need to have snow on that land in order to be able to dig out their dens. So
that element of frozenness has come up a bunch of times in the chat. People referring to the importance of ice and feeding, but also ice and snow in terms of denning. And so this is a marine mammal, right? But this is a marine mammal that has one particular stage of its life history that is kind of obligatorily terrestrial.
That's right. Exactly.
But it is a maritime bear.
It is a maritime bear. So here's some more data. Take a look at this map or this graph, okay? And see if you can come up with one, maybe even two different statements about this map or this graph. What conclusions can we make from it? Take a look at all the information everywhere.
That's a great question. 2012 was particularly warm.
Yeah.
One of you had asked about what happened in 2012. It was globally a very warm year.
Yeah.
We have since surpassed it, which gives you a sense of where the trend is headed.
I was sailing in the Arctic in 2012. In fact, I moved to Guelph at the end of that season. My first time in Guelph was right up the end of that season, and I remember it was open water everywhere. Okay.
It was warm and hot and dry in Guelph as well. Everything that was supposed to live in the spring in the leaf litter of the dairy bush died months earlier than it ought to have.
Huh. Okay. So yeah, what I like so far that I'm seeing in the chat is obviously focusing, of course, on this declining trend, but also you're exploring how to express the variation or the variability that happens from year to year. And I think that that's really key to try to get your head around it. I don't know if we can make any definite sort of conclusions about it, but I do like that you're kind of grappling and noticing that as another aspect of the data that can be described, and that's fantastic. So here's another one. Let's go with this one. This one might be a little bit easier to play around with respect to the annual variability. So go ahead and take a look. This is a little bit different, right? We've got a different title. Ice breakup means that's the date where the ice cracks, the big ice sheet cracks and starts to like bang against each other and starts to break up and melt, okay? So let's also think about two things that we can say.
So the day of the year, the y-axis, if you run into something called the Julian day,
Ooh.
but it's from January 1st, that's 01.
Yep.
And then add 30, add 30, add 30, and you cumulatively get,
Day of the year.
if you hadn't run into that before.
Yep. It's a sort of kind of standardized way of expressing date. In biology, we do it all the time.
Yeah, for
it's called the
phenology
Julian day. Yeah.
Because thinking about things in terms of units that are mostly 30, but
Yeah.
often not,
Yeah.
is not helpful.
No. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so yes, there is a decline in the day of the year, so it's breaking up earlier and earlier, right?
Yep.
And then also, like, it's a lot more predictable when that day is going to be in the 80s than it is in the 90s and the aughts. Okay, so it's a lot less predictable, right? You might even be able to put some money down on this one here in the 80s, but you probably wouldn't want to put money down on a bet for when that day is going to be as we get into the 90s and the aughts.
So the trend here is not as steep as the trend we saw in the last. The y-axis doesn't extend as far towards the contemporary time, but the variation around that trend line has changed, certainly.
Yeah. Cool? Do you see that? Are we good? Okay. I hope so. So, what will happen?
Identify this species.
This was a lovely bear.
That's your picture, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I was at a research station. I think it was when I was doing my PhD, and this bear, just like, lovely look. He's even smiling. Just came by, sniffed our equipment, and then wandered off. It was perfect. Okay. So what's going to happen?
The best bears are the bears that behave well.
That's right. And are not hungry.
Yeah.
Okay. What's going to happen? So this is all about physiology. It is all about making predictions with respect to what we understand the internal environment of the bears to be, but also then what's happening in the external environment, right? So this is about physiology. To do that, we need to talk about 3 time exposures. So this is a scale, another scale. We were talking about geographic scale before. We were talking about all sorts of other, like the biological levels of organization scales and all of these things. Here's another one for you that could be really helpful. It's a time scale from a biology perspective, right? So we're not talking about like, noon or like, 3 p.m. or whatever. It's three different points. One is acute, followed by chronic. And I feel like if you're familiar with health and disease, these are familiar words to you. And then evolutionary. So that one I think we kind of understand. We also use the word generational. So if we say generational, we mean evolutionary. If we say evolutionary, we mean generational. There is no difference between those when we're talking about a biological timescale. So acute, short duration, chronic, medium duration, and then evolutionary, long duration over many, many generations, right? Okay, And that's kind of simple. And you're like, okay, I
Got it.
understand.
Move
Like,
on.
I got it.
Move on.
No, there's like nuance to this, right?
Oh,
nuance.
Oh, nuance.
Sorry. Okay. It's complicated.
Would that it were so simple.
Would that it were so simple.
Hail Caesar, the Coen brothers. Go out and watch it.
It's complicated. Why is it complicated? Why is it not easy to just have these clear-cut times that are like, it's a matter of minutes?
Because biology is fuzzy, like a hair.
Yeah, it's fuzzy like a hair. Okay, but generally, when we talk about acute, we're talking about immediate or temporary. And I hope you notice, these are the responses. And up here, we have exposures. Big difference, but most of the time, an acute exposure gives you an acute response. So, you go outside for 2 minutes, it's freaking cold, you start shivering, you come back inside, you stop shivering. Acute, 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 the whole deal. The exposure was short, the response was short duration and temporary, and then it went away as soon as that exposure was removed, right? That's usually how it works, but there are some amazing, like, adaptations where they're decoupled. We can talk about that a little bit later, but for now, just kind of go with this. Chronic, similarly, longer duration exposure, maybe like the stress of being in university. That's chronic, okay? And your response to it will also be chronic, hopefully reversible and hopefully manageable, but it is longer duration that can have longer term effects. Evolutionary, we're talking about here adaptation, selection, and all of those things. Okay. And if you're like, okay, but like I need like timelines and definitions and stuff like this, this is as good as we could do it because it's complicated by the fact that a bacterium lives for a very different lifetime than a gray whale. And for them, a bacterium, the actual exposure may be chronic, even if it's in a matter of minutes. Whereas for a gray whale, it may not even notice what's going on after a minute or two, right? Depending upon what it is. So it's complicated by the fact that the natural history and the biology of the species is what determines whether it's acute or chronic. And so you really have to dive into what's going on to be able to say, yeah, for sure that's acute or that's chronic, or I'm not sure that it is because of this, this, and this, but if it has this effect, then it's that, that, and that. That's what we want to like get you to use your sort of your thinking about, right? Rather than be able to go, oh, that's definitely this. There are some though, and when we like test you on it, sorry, we have to, but like when we do, it will be a lot more clear. But just understand that there's nuance to this. Okay, including the biological outcomes. So we won't read this to you. You can read it and work through it, but hopefully it'll be a bit of a guide. And importantly, should I put it on pause so that we don't have to cut it out later?
It's easy to cut out.
It's easy to cut out? Yeah. Okay, we are going to introduce you to some of these exposures and their consequences.
Rick Mercer has a book out right now.
Yeah?
If you got book spending money, go to the bookshelf.
Why is it not working? There we go.
It is the mandate of this show to ask questions that have never been answered, to answer questions that perhaps should be left unanswered. It's a dangerous job, but it's the job that we have before us. And today, I ask the most loaded, dangerous question of them all. When it comes to weather in this country, who are the toughest city folk? I'm saying Winnipeg. And we're gonna get mail on this one. Why won't you talk to us? What is this about?
This
Middle of November, look at it.
I know.
Airport closed.
You could expect this at any time in Winnipeg, and you know, it's not really that bad.
Look at all this snow. It's the middle of November.
We're tough.
How come you're wearing shoes and not boots?
I don't have boots. I got dress shoes.
You don't have boots?
No.
Don't have a hat? No.
Winnipeg just refused to accept reality.
Winter in Winnipeg, it slows the mosquitoes down.
Who's the toughest Winnipegger?
Dr. Popsicle. Dr. Popsicle.
Who the heck is Dr. Popsicle?
He's at the U of M. He's a prof. He survived the northern rigors of Lake Winnipeg.
And now I'm here in the lab with Dr. Popsicle, Professor Popsicle.
That's what they've called me at times. My name is Gordon Giesbrecht. Welcome to the lab.
Hello, Gordon. Thank
How are
you.
you?
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. So I've been on the streets of Winnipeg, and a number of people have said you're the toughest Winnipegger.
Well, I don't know about that, but I've probably been colder than most people.
What do you do?
Well, we study how people respond to cold water, sometimes ice cold water.
That's your job.
That's what we do.
So students pay to study with you, and then you give them hypothermia. Is that the idea?
Actually,
Have you given any students hypothermia?
Oh yeah, many. Yes.
But that's
Hundreds.
very painful.
It is painful, and that's why we actually pay them.
Oh, how much do they get paid? A lot?
$100 each time they come, because we deal with temperature all the time.
Hello, what's that?
We generally want to know what's happening with people's core temperature.
Oh no! $100.
It's not looking like so much money anymore, eh?
No.
We normally stick this in the nose, and it goes in behind, down the esophagus to the heart, and then we get an idea of what heart temperature is. Okay.
Can I close my eyes? Okay. Is it?
Okay, now you just stick that in. And you just start. Perfect. Nicely done. Now, if you could hold on to that, please, because we wouldn't want to lose that. We've got to put this on.
Oh. Did you shovel out this morning?
No, I actually have someone do it for me.
You don't like shoveling?
Well, I'm not big on it.
No. Too cold? What's that beeping noise?
That is your heart beating.
That's beeping too fast, don't you think?
Yeah.
Are you trained in CPR?
Yes.
You are.
And we actually have a defibrillator over there, so that's really...
Why would you have a defibrillator, sir? You really have a defibrillator?
Safety first, yeah. We do.
Well, that makes me feel so much better. Beep, 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 beep. Okay, no. No, that's plenty.
That's good.
Plenty of ice.
No, not this. Relax.
Has anyone ever got stuck in the winch?
No.
Because that would be a relief at this point.
Put your feet in the water. Here we go. Put your feet in the water. Here we go. Thank you. Thank you. Here we go.
I'm on fire. Why am I on fire? Why is it a fire feeling?
Because the receptors on your skin are now being very cold and
Why
they're
can't
just
I
firing
hear?
off.
Why can't I hear my heart?
It's still working.
Okay, and how am I helping mankind and Canadians who fall through the ice in future? Please, quickly, sir.
Well, what we tell people is this is the cold shock you've just gone through. And if you were in ice water, you would be hyperventilating and gasping.
But I'm not, because I'm calm, because I'm brave.
Yes.
Because I'm brave.
Would you mind if I put some just a little more ice in here? Is that okay?
Yes. No.
Thank you.
What's that? Okay. Oh, gee, it's dropping. It's like, that's unbelievable.
If you could quickly get to
I
someplace where
think
you
my
can warm
penis is actually inverted. I mean, I've had shrinkage before, but I think this has gone beyond shrinkage.
up. So would you like to get warmed up now?
No! Yeah, I'm good. Yes!
Here we go.
Okay.
Feet up.
Now what? What is this?
This is warm water.
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's hot.
Are you smiling?
Oh, yeah, that's good.
That's good.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Oh, that's good. Thank you very much. Winnipeg's toughest dude.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming to the lab.
Thank you. I'll never do it again.
Stop it. There.
There we go.
So, someone even noted, they kept noting that, yes, they were getting paid, but enough? Yeah.
No. Okay, quick polling question for you now. Let's end again. Like, we're just throwing this stuff at you like today. Don't worry at all. But here we go. Which of the following statements would be consistent with a chronic exposure to the cold? So what we showed you in the video was an acute exposure. What would be an equivalent of chronic? Just a few more seconds. Well done, over 80%. So good. Okay, so I'm gonna end it here. Oh, almost at 90. Go, 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 go. So close.
But is it worth it?
Oh, it's so worth it.
No, it is
click it in,
not.
click it in. Okay, 89%.
So worth it.
Well done. Okay. So I'm going to end it and I'll share the results. Okay. So, well done, first of all. And it's down to basically two, both B and C. So the answer is B. And so what we put in C to kind of get you to grapple a little bit with, you know, the difference between a chronic and an acute repeated. In this case, and again, like you don't have a ton of human biology behind you and all of that stuff, it's totally fine. So just kind of think about it in this case, though, that if you take a bath for a few minutes every day, that would be a repeated acute, right? You wouldn't likely have a sustained response to being in a really cold environment throughout the rest of the 24 hours of that day. Whereas if you moved to Winnipeg and it was freaking cold or colder than what your previous place was, then you would have to have this sustained response, right? Either by wearing more clothing or burning more energy or whatever it is that you need in order to keep your body at the same temperature. Okay. Stop sharing. Good. Okay, wonderful. Great. Small introduction to the different. And our homework today is going to really get you to work through those things. So hopefully it'll be really helpful. And then if we think about it from a generational perspective, what would be an equivalent kind of statement of exposure along a generational timeline? What was sort of an equivalent thing? What would Rick have to do in order to be then considered in a generational exposure to cold? Any ideas? More body fat. Okay, multiple generations would need to live in Winnipeg. Super good.
Yep.
Okay.
Kids that grew up there.
Yep. Super good. So yeah, there would have to be these like multiple generations and selection. And so we do see populations of humans that have undergone those selection pressures that are much better adapted to living in the cold environments. And so yes, absolutely. Right. Over time, it would have to happen sort of over many, many generations, right? Okay, super. Good. So what would happen if instead of looking at Rick, we looked at fish? So we've changed the biology of the species, and we're always going to be doing that, kind of down, bouncing around from different sort of like templates, biological templates, right?
Taxa. Different
Yeah,
taxa.
yeah. So that you can consider whether or not the response would be the same or would it be different because of the biology of that species. And to do that, we have to give you two more words. The first one are conformers, and the next one are regulators.
And these are, I think, going to be a little bit intuitive to you, but we're going to do it with pictures as well, because if anything, if things are intuitive with words and you're like, oh yeah, I got that, move on, move along, we're going to reinforce it with some figures. So the conformers are the ones where your internal conditions just track the environment. And the regulators, it's different. You try and force something in a band a survival band where you can live. And we can plot that pretty nicely. If we put the external environment of whatever variable you want, and this is actually kind of fun. We're going to think about with temperature, whatever, but salinity, temperature, it'll increase, say, from left to right across the x, and then your own internal environment will plot that on the y.
So why don't you go ahead and try?
Yeah. So if you're a conformer, what's going to happen here? What will the plot look like? So take your stylo up here, select it. We don't care about the color. You can express your color,
Express your color.
your mood,
Pick a color.
and begin.
Actually, I really like this rainbow.
I like the rainbow. Don't erase it.
This is fantastic. Okay. Super, super good.
That is awesome.
Okay. Yeah. That looks great.
Now, changes here on the Y, you're all basically saying the same thing, right? And a change on the Y in terms of where the intercept is, you're basically saying it's tracking it, but maybe the starting conditions, it already has boosted them from something a little bit above the environment. And you could imagine something where that would be possible. Or like that dark blue one where it was slightly lower.
Yep.
But these are great. These are all kind of biologically things we could run into in the world.
Perfect. Okay.
So pat yourself on the back.
Well done. Here's what it looks like in like physiological data speak, right? Oh, yay, you've signed it. Well done. Okay. So in physiological speak, here's what it looks like. It's called the line of conformity. If you want like a piece of vocabulary to go with it.
Yeah, or something that you think, if you're thinking of like POV perspective in video gaming, this line of conformity, you're always veering off of it.
Yeah.
Something's like, go that way.
Yeah.
I'm over there.
I'm over there. Far more interesting.
Dead.
Yeah. Okay. So let's think about regulators. So if you're you are a regulator. So what would we have to see on this graph in order to go, oh, that's a regulator? So we have the same XY axes. Go ahead and draw us the line of a regulator.
Oh.
Ooh, Neil Patterson, you're on to something interesting. Okay.
I like it.
I like it.
There's a lot to talk about there.
There's a lot to unpack. Wonderful. Oh, good. What's the squiggly one? This is a squiggly one.
Somebody's got data.
Yeah. I love the squiggly one, right? It's
I am
so good.
currently in a bath of ice, and this is my heart.
I'm just adjusting. Yeah, super good. Okay, well done. Lauren seems to be putting a scale on there. I love that. That's amazing. Okay, really good. Squiggly lines, all sorts of good things. Okay, super. You have it?
I do. I have got it.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember what's coming next because there's some things in the chat that are just like awesome.
No.
So, but we're not going to unpack them yet.
No. Okay. Really good. So here, if you were like looking at a textbook, this is what you would see. It's kind of a super classic kind of thing. What I think I would note compared to what you've done, and you've done amazing, is that there is a kind of limit for where this ends and where it begins. Okay, so regulation can happen within a range of conditions, and then things go all wonky. Okay,
And those ranges depend on the species.
Totally.
Depend on the x-axis and which taxa you're measuring.
and some the line can be super long, like way out over there, and sometimes it can be really short, depending upon the species.
And in some cases, instead of beginning a process of tracking, sometimes there's a hard edge. In some of the things that you look at, it's like I will regulate, I am dead.
No.
And that is it.
Exactly.
Now,
Can I just do one more
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
Similarly, going back to our ectotherms. Wait.
that's the word.
No, I'm going all over the place now. Here. Similarly, this line has hard limits, right? That's really important to note as well. Okay. So it's not like they can just conform to the end of time. Or to like hell freezing over or whatever. At some point there's a limit, just like with regulators, at some point there's a limit.
We could do that with temperature
Totally.
in hell and the internal environment of El Diablo.
Oh, nice. Let's kill the devil. Here's how we do it. Turn up the heat.
Yeah.
Okay.
One would presume he's a conformer. And then at some point...
I like that you presume that he's a he.
Oh, the Diablo? I think I
accept
would
that.
for sure.
Okay, so there are limits to everything, and everything is going to be different depending upon the biology of the species.
Now, one of the things, the words that were popping up here in the chat that I wanted to talk about were poikiltherm ectotherm, endotherm. You've bumped into clearly some of these words before. We just used one of them.
Yes.
What we want to point out right away is these two categories, regulator, conformer, aren't strictly categories. There's a continuum. And some taxa are closer to being strictly regulatory for certain environmental conditions, certain abiotic variables.
Yep.
Some are more strictly conforming, and there's many of them, and this is the diversity of life. Remember, maybe 100 million different species on the planet. Sometimes the simplified way that we talk about them hide from us the exciting ways that they have of adapting or changing between these strategies.
Yep.
And that's going to, I'll plant that seed there.
So good. The other important thing about these terms with respect to some of the others that you're like thinking about in your head is that these are variable independent. They are not referring specifically to temperature, for example. And they're not referring to salinity. They're just kind of big umbrella terms. And then we're going to like dive into some of the more specific ones. But these ones are variable independent, which means that some can be regulators of one thing and conformers of another.
I love that. I love it.
So good. Okay. So here is what we want to ask you to think about, right? And can we do this all together? Because it gets like really like a total shit show if we all kind of start stamping and doing things together. Okay, or apart. Okay, so let's focus.
That's actually that's an official pedagogical term.
Yeah. Okay.
Le shit show.
Let's focus on mammals and let's use our red hearts. For temperature. Are they a conformer or a regulator using our red hearts?
Mammals only.
Super good. Okay. Let's go ahead and use our red hearts for the remaining species. All red. Birds, regulators for temperature. Reptiles and amphibians. Fishes and invertebrates. Olivia, I love that you're like, I don't know with invertebrates. Why do we love that Olivia is unsure about invertebrates?
Because we're all taught to think that invertebrates are cold-blooded. And they track. Right. And they just don't. They have so many strategies.
That's right. So, good.
So I love...
Yes. Well done. I love the exceptions. Good. Well done.
That's
Thank
amazing.
you, Olivia, for getting that started. Okay. Now, we're just going to do mammals. Don't do anything yet. Pick something that's blue. I think the question mark is blue. So let's do or Megan, the arrow is also, so use your arrow or your blue question mark. Mammals. For ions, think salt. Are they conformers or regulators? Yay. Okay.
Aha.
Let's do birds. For salt, are they regulators or conformers?
Oh.
Great. Reptiles and amphibians, are they regulators or conformers for salt? Okay. Fishes, same question. Regulators or conformers? And then invertebrates, also the same question. All over the place. Okay.
That is awesome.
This is great. Well done. This was like the smoothest that this has ever gone. Well done. Good. So we see a bit of a dividing line, right? Between birds and reptiles and amphibians where things go like, whoop, all the way over there. And that's largely the trend that we were hoping to be able to demonstrate with this.
Question, important one, just about what do you mean by salt? So we're thinking about marine environments. So think about a marine environment that is out in the middle of the ocean, has a certain salinity, and then you track it into a bay and you kind of go upstream in a river that's dumping into that bay and it's still saline, maybe less saline, maybe less, and then at some point you're up in the river and it's not saline anymore at all.
Yep.
So that salinity can be one of these variables.
And
an important one, for marine organisms.
That's right. And if we're eating a mussel or we're eating an oyster or we're eating a fish from the ocean, that fish, that flesh, is not made out of salt water, right? So their bodies are actively removing salt from their systems in order to be able to be a freshwater body inside a saltwater ocean, right? So there's this regulation, this removal of salt, and actively passing it out. Same goes for birds, that are eating saltier things, that are drinking saltier water. Seabirds drink salt water. They have to remove that. We remove salt from our bodies all the time.
And there's amazing terrestrial trends with salt as well on the continental scale. The farther away that you are from the oceans, in our continent in North America, the closer you are to the middle, the geographic middle longitudinally, the more you have to, as some of you noted, search out salt, because you need salt. We need salt to have a neural system. And so there are parrots in the Amazon that search out salty clay licks. Hey, salut Daniel, ça va?
Vois-tu?
Petit dis bonjour.
I want a snack.
Hey,
You want a
monsieur.
snack?
J'ai un petit snack pour toi. Regarde ça. Ça, c'est une... Oh, peut-être ce n'est pas le meilleur snack. Mais commence avec ça. Et
Commence
quand
avec
nous sommes
ça.
finis,
2 minutes. On arrive,
je
okay?
peux préparer un autre snack pour toi.
Okay, so
Ça, c'est notre... This is Daniel.
this is Daniel. He's not feeling well today. There we go. There we go. Okay.
Veux-tu assis là avec ton écran?
Okay.
Avec nous? Okay.
So here's us filling it in. Again, these are kind of quick fills with all sorts of interesting questions that I hope you see are Easter eggs for what we're going to be doing for the next little while, right? So we're going to talk about some of these exceptions. It's all of the things that are like off that line of conformity that get me really excited. So let's focus on that.
Yeah.
And it helps us understand the more generalized model, right? By understanding these exceptions.
Daniel's actually participating in today's lecture because I think there are polar bears on
Ooh.
that adorable...
Oh, there are.
Well,
Yay.
there's Arctic foxes.
Okay. So we're going to talk about thermoregulation. Now we're introducing you to a variable, right? To like a specific term. Now we're talking about temperature. And we're going to do it in the context of
I
things.
want one of these cameras.
I
Oh
know.
my goodness.
Things that need to stay warm versus things that need to get rid of heat, right? Very different strategies associated with those adaptations.
We could get one of these cameras and model you and I.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm definitely more of like polar bear looking.
And I am an elephant. I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had the big ears.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bigger ears.
Yeah. So we have to think about it too, not only in terms of ectotherms and endotherms, right? Cold-blooded and warm-blooded, but also in terms of environmental context. Mm-hmm. These are both warm-blooded, but they have very different adaptations to surviving in their environment. So here's your homework, and we are on time. Oh, look at that. Okay, here's your homework. Here are a whole bunch of statements. Okay, you're going to get this exact question for Wednesday morning. But what we want you to do is identify the time scale and the relevant biological level of organization of each of these statements, right? So is it acute, chronic, generational? Is it about the organism? Is it about the population? Is it about the organ system, right? And to associate each of these statements with those two things. And then when we give you the question, I think one of them is going to be incorrect and the other are going to be correct. And we want you to just pick the one that doesn't fit. Okay.
But so to prepare for that question, go through and do for each one of these 5.
Yeah.
Have the answer.
Ready to go.
And then we will ask you a question about it.
Yes. Okay.
This has been fun.
So fun.
Yeah.
Take care.
Watch out for ice baths. And we wave.
And we wave.
And we wave. And we wave.